Welcome back, session 3. And today we're going to start to delve into what are known as the yamas and niyamas. But before we do that, let's take a moment to do our invocation that I shared with you last time. So if you don't have your sheet nearby, I have it right here on the screen, but I'm going to invite you to settle into your seat. Lower your gaze and close your eyes completely. Finding your breath. You may even wish to light a candle or some other symbolic gesture. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Again, just allowing those few moments of silence before you raise your gaze or open your eyes completely. And just a reminder that this Guru invocation is in honoring of the lineage of teachers that go back through time, whether we may know them or not, but to recognize what they've brought forth for us. And then acknowledging the teacher in front of you. So I acknowledge you as a teacher to me and you as vice versa. And then finally that growing relationship and that faith that you are cultivating of the teacher within you. Before we get started today, I just wanted to share one little study tip. So if you are really wanting to learn the sutras from the Sanskrit and like creating your own transliteration or your own translation of the transliteration, one thing I can suggest to do is I used index cards. I found this really cool thing that keeps them all together like this. And what I've done over the years that I've been studying them is I write it out in the transliteration form that I choose. And then above it, as every time I go back to it, I read the kind of my way of interpreting it. And sometimes it resonates with me, and sometimes I have to go back and kind of go, wait, no, there's an evolution here for me from within or otherwise in my understanding of the Sanskrit term, my experience with what the sutra is talking about, whatever it is. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm not suggesting you have to. It's just a way in which you can come to really delve in and get to know them and make them your own on some level so you really understand them. So today we are going to start, whoops, we went too far, with the yamas. So the yamas, and just to give you one little Sanskrit tip here, as you can see, instead of just writing yamas with a dash before the S, I have done a dash S. So one of my teachers shared with me that actually there aren't plurals in Sanskrit, and so this just denotes the fact that that it's understood that this is being put into a plural form, even though that's not the proper, per se, way to pluralize something, if that makes sense. Sorry, it's kind of confusing. But basically, there aren't plurals, but I put this here because we are talking about them as a collective and in a plural form. So, but you'll know now, if you see something dash-essing like that, that just means that that person knows just a tad bit more about maybe Sanskrit than others, and you can consider that in your transliteration reading of that writing. So just a reminder, the yamas are precepts for ethical behavior. We talked about these slightly. And they are not necessarily concerned with right or wrong. It's more about just, as we had talked about in the last video, it's a way to consider our own behavior and our own thinking towards others. We could consider it like an external self-discipline where we're using it to cultivate right perception. And the yamas are also sometimes referred to as the foundation of yoga because of their ethical guidance for us. And this is about assisting us with avoiding certain behaviors that could lead to suffering and difficulty, and then also embracing those behaviors, which could lead to greater happiness and obviously a less stressful life because of that. But they're all seen as reflections of our attitudes in life. So ideally, they are practiced continuously throughout time. They are something practiced no matter the circumstance. And as I had shared with you earlier, there's something for me personally when I engage with them. I've noticed that there are different levels to which I can engage in them. Sometimes my levels go up, sometimes my levels go down. It's nothing consistent. It's kind of all over the place, but I try to keep them at the same level consistently as possible. But we're human. It's not going to always happen. So the first one that we're going to come to, some consider it the highest ranking. That's why it's first. It's the first yama versus the first niyama. The yamas come before the niyamas, is ahimsā. And so as you look at this word, you can see, oops, wrong button, sorry. You can see that it has the markation over the last letter that you have learned before. So I'm going to give you a minute to see if you can remember what that meant. And I'm going to believe I hear somebody saying it means to hold it twice as long, and you're right. So when pronouncing the word, it would be ahiṁsā. So himsa, the root of it in Sanskrit, refers to killing or harming. And then a new thing you can learn about Sanskrit is that in general, when there's a ah, like that character at the beginning of this word, it's a negation. So for example, in this one, it means non-harming, non-killing. So it's a negation of the word non-violence before, okay? It brings in reverence and love for all. Oh, that's a hard one. Reverence for all. And it prompts us to not cause harm in thought, speech, or action to any living being, including ourselves. It means that in our life there is a lack of violence on every level that we can possibly conjure. And it means acting with kindness and friendliness and consideration for each other. My little quote here from B.K.S. Iyengar suggests that the practice of nonviolence guides the replacements of negative and destructive thoughts with positive and constructive ones. So if you're not sure where to start with this practice, that's a perfect guidance from B.K.S. Iyengar, is to start with replacing a negative, whether it's toward yourself or other, and try to replace it with a positive. Even if you don't speak it out loud, you could do it internally. And then on a deeper level, ahimsā is less of a conscious process, and it becomes more of a natural consequence of our yogic practice. So as our journey unfolds, it leads us to greater awareness, and that awareness leads us to more tranquility, and that eventually endures, and it allows us to stay more connected to that innate nature that lives within us, though we will get pulled by societal things and pieces. And as you'll read in your readings for this week with Michael Stone, he refers to some of this and some of the ways in which we can work with this in the modern world. And hopefully it begins to prevent that desire to create any kind of harm to anyone or ourselves in any way. And hopefully we begin to realize that the inner self in others is identical to that which is inside of ourselves. And that's a little bit of what Maya Angelou is talking to here, is that how people remember us is based on the way in which we made them feel. Yes, words can come and go, but the impact is lasting. And when the impact is negative, creating ahiṁsā, that is remembered and felt for time. So I want to invite you to take a comfortable seat, and I'm going to pause for just a moment and we're going to take a little meditation. So sorry for that little switch over there. I just need to move over to my meditation spot. And so we're going to do a visualization right now that works towards and embracing that reverence and love that we were talking about that is resulting from that practice of ahiṁsā. Kind of consider this practice a bit of a metta or loving kindness type of meditation and cultivation of empathy for self and other. So when you feel comfortable and when you're ready, I'm going to invite you to find that extra comfortable seat. Put down your pens and papers, and you can always come back and write whatever you need to write. And then I'm going to invite you into that place where there's more quiet. You could lower the gaze or close the eyes completely. Finding your place where you can connect more with that innate nature. And I call this practice the loosening of the knot. The knot of our mental and emotional habits, or samskaras. So again, softening the gaze or closing the eyes completely. Bringing a softness to the belly through the breath. Holding yourself in a place of compassion. I invite you to bring forth a moment when you felt an urge to react in a way unlike yourself. And recognize that was then, and this is now. Right now. Just reach inward to that moment for just a few moments here. Again, holding compassion for yourself. Allow the connection with the breath to be a grounding force for you. You can even notice each part of the breath as we've practiced in the hatha sessions. If you find yourself a little too transfixed on the mental part of this, it's just a compassionate remembering. And as the breath generates a bit more bodily ease, gently open to a space of inquiry. So by that we mean we're not working to fix or change, to judge. We're not doing any of that. We're just being curious as we step into this space of inquiry. Create a space for yourself that's safe. That may be a visual of hugging yourself or taking a break for a moment and jotting down whatever it is you need at this moment. Do that. And then when you feel ready, I invite you to trace that reaction that you thought of in the beginning, one that was unlike yourself, to anything you know to be true of yourself. Maybe there's something within that samskara, that habit, that pattern that you know is you, and you also recognize the ways in which it harms you and or others. Maybe it's a place where a negative self-talk loop engages. Again, being compassionate and kind, soft in the belly. Breathing in, breathing out. Again, if you wish to write about this, you could pause the video or just stay with it and write after. And now, as you feel the energy of that moment, I'm going to invite you to begin to just hum along, just a gentle hum with the tempura. Just humming. There's nothing else to do, nothing else to figure out. This moment to melt the heart, to melt into the sound, softening through the whole being. Holding softness through the jaw, through the heart space, through the whole being as best as you can, with deep compassion. Staying inward for just a moment more. Holding a softness all over as best you can. From the mind to the mouth to the heart. Holding compassion for yourself. Before you open your eyes, I want to share just one quote here. In its purest form, ahiṁsā is a spontaneous expression of the highest form of an unconditional, positive regard for everyone and everything. So as you continue to hold the softness within, just imagine holding positive regard, including towards yourself. And then when you're ready, in your own time, gently open your eyes or lift your gaze. if you need, you can always pause that video, take some time to write reflections now, or we can continue on together right now. It's the next sutra, or the next yama, satya. So satya comes from the Sanskrit root sat. And this means to dedicate to unspoken truth nestled in your heart. So maybe that's part of what came to you in that meditation we just did, or that little visualization. So satya is then truthfulness. It's the act of seeing and speaking what is true versus our version of what we desire to be. There's a subtlety there. And interpretations of satya come to us from multiple teachers, but they all agree that it includes authenticity, pure intention, and rightful communication. Authenticity, pure intention, and rightful communication. And also, these renowned teachers of yoga note that satya is an idea of consequence. So I'm sure you can kind of connect that, the capacity to speak rightfully, truthfully, definitely has a consequence to it. And the power of Shakti, or Shakti power of truth, is created through alchemy of personal integrity, knowledge, and humility. And I think that last one is super important. It's one of those things that maybe we kind of forget about in society these days, is the practicing of humility. So in that truth-telling, we practice personal integrity, knowledge. So in the knowledge part, it could be, say, that we know that if we should tell a hard truth, it could devastate someone. And so we have to consider the balance of this. I often have been asked this question about satya. Should we always tell someone what we think of another's behavior? And satya follows ahimsā for a reason. It reminds us to honor the principle of non-harming. So there's a fine balance there between satya and ahimsā. First, we non-harm, then we tell the truth, only if it doesn't cause harm, or in such a way that it causes the least amount of harm. And this is the complexity of enacting satya. It is a practice of a lifetime. So this sutra, Sutra 236, as you can see, we've moved to the second pada with the yamas, states that when one sharpens their capacity to speak truthfully, one gains the satya, or the power of manifesting speech. So what one says comes to truth. For this reason, it is essential for one to put ahiṁsā first and to be mindful that what we say is most beneficial in and through enacting grace and compassionate consideration. So let me just read that last part again. It is essential for one to put ahiṁsā first and to be mindful that what we say is most beneficial through enacting grace and compassionate consideration. So that goes outwardly and inwardly. Okay? So just some tidbits for you to remember as you consider satya. So this week, or this session, I should say again, you are going to notice that there is now a sheet for you that is about gauging yourself, basically. And in that sheet that you can print out with you for each week, or you could answer it on your computer, just depends on what you prefer. There are going to be 3 sections, okay? The first section is the section that is called Inquiry of Self. And this section, this gauging yourself section, is very much about that self-study practice, the practice of svadhyaya at a deep level. So the Inquiry of Self is a summary of the current teaching, the current Sanskrit words, the current sutras, and it's also at the same time a pointing toward potential personal evolution on your path. And the way in which that looks and how it's interacted is completely, individual. All right. The second section is self-reflection questions. And so these are questions that are meant to deepen a reflection for you or deepen your understanding of this session's themes and the terms. All right. And then the last section is called Affirming Self-Realization. And these are affirmations, again, associated with the learnings of the session that you can use in whatever way you find helpful. The reason I added affirmations is because in my own experience from many, many years ago when I was very sick with cancer, that affirmations on Post-it notes, and this was in the 80s, so this is, a long time ago, but having them about reminded me of what it is I wanted to focus on versus something else. So for me, it was affirmations of well-being and visualizing myself in the best state I could visualize myself versus focusing on the things that were really hard at that time. It wasn't disregarding them. It wasn't saying they didn't exist. But when my mind wanted to stay stuck in that pattern of thinking about one thing, it was a tool to help me kind of take away from there and go towards something more positive so my brain could rest a little more easily, cultivate a little more happiness by considering possibility versus staying elsewhere. So I hope you have a good time with those reflections. And just a reminder that if you do feel like you might go onward to be part of the moksha overt immersion and or the teacher training, it is really helpful that you do these reflections because you will be asked to do a little writing on this as part of those trainings. So you could start now so you don't have to remember later. Okay, so let's go ahead and close out our session. We're going to close it out with just a simple Om. So for the last time of this session, I'm going to invite you again to lower your gaze or close your eyes completely. Maybe connecting with that softness that you found in that earlier grace and truth, or the loosening of the knot. We'll just Om together 3 times, drawing the breath in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in your next session.